right. Doors closed. Last item of today. Is everybody still excited? Just double check. Yes. Great, fantastic. Thank you all. Today I'll be talking a bit to you about the future of UI. Not to be confused with AI. That's that other thing a lot of people are talking about. Just to be sure. Nobody leaving yet? Okay, great. Thanks. So maybe a quick pulse check, if I may. Since this is Frontmania, who is actually currently working as a front-end developer? Can I see some hands? Wow, look at you. Beautiful. In beginning presentations, I saw that there were also a bunch of designers. Are there any designers here? Oh, yeah. Oh, so many. Lovely. Fantastic. Some are doing both, yeah, of course. So, the future of UI. That's what we're going on about. But first, let me take it one little step back and talk to you about the basics of creating a good UI. When people ask me the basics, I always narrow that down to three main pillars. UI should be controllable, it should be accessible, and it should be stylable. Now, this might be true for users, but this is also true for us as authors, as front-end developers, as designers. And there are a lot of common UI patterns out there. Maybe let's keep that hand action going just a little bit longer. And can I ask you, which of you had to implement one of these before? Of course, all of you. These are our basic HTML form elements, and they are the foundation of web UI. And each of them are controllable. They are accessible. Not each and every one of those is equally stylable, I'll give you that. But still, they're perfect in their own little way. But sometimes they're not enough. Sometimes they're not enough. Sometimes you need just a little bit more. How about, maybe you ever had to create one of these before, right? Not really an HTML element for that. Not really. Or how about this one? A nice little toast popping at the bottom of your screen asking you to subscribe to an email newsletter, which you always press yes to because you love getting email all the time. But maybe just one more. How about this one? Some cool own video player you want to make, some outside video controls. That's just awesome stuff, isn't it? So when you want to create these kinds of experience, you're probably going to be searching for a JavaScript solution. You're going to choose a library. And while you're going on your little library hunt, you might be wondering, like, is this library accessible? Does it work with assistive technology? Does it work with keyboard navigation? If you're asking that question, you're already doing a fantastic job in my eyes. But you might be going a bit further and wondering, does this library give me the possibility to make something stylable? Can I fit the branding of my client inside of that UI or my company? And last but not least, is this UI controllable? Is it expandable? Can I use one library that does a whole bunch of things? We often ask us that, just for performance reasons. So choosing the correct library, it can get a bit frustrating, just as it is frustrating to find the perfect AI-generated image of an anime girl looking frustrated. It's a very frustrating situation, because these libraries, they do hurt our performance, and accessibility kind of becomes an afterthought. I've seen this happen before. Somebody created his own beautiful little select element, playing around with it, and then right before the project needs to be shipped, they do a little bit of accessibility testing, as we intend to do at the end for some reason, and it seems that the keyboard navigation is way off. What happens next? It gets shipped anyway, because you have a deadline to catch. And that shouldn't happen. We're better than that. And also, styling can get so hacky when using libraries. I can't count the many times that I actually had to use important in my CSS just to overrule some libraries' inline styles. Very frustrating. It gets messy really, really fast. But I am here to tell you that things are going to get better. And I, for one, believe that it's about time too. First introduction of myself. Once again, hi everyone. My name is Brech, and I am a front-end developer and also doing a bit of dev work. I go by the handle UtilityBand on various social media. There's so many of them out there. You've got the X thing, you've got the elephant thing, you've got the butterfly thing. So many of them out there. But if you search for this, you'll probably find me somewhere. I work at a company called I.O., which is a partner of this event. So that's awesome. We're also hiring, by the way, so maybe I get a raise if I say this on stage, not sure. I can try it. And besides working at I/O, I am also a Google developer expert for web UI. This is something I really love doing. It gives me a chance to get acquainted with people all over the world, communities, developers, learn from people, and spreading some knowledge myself. But not because I'm a speaker. I'm actually not doing this for a very long time. I haven't spoken that many times. It's because I write, and I love writing, and I write on my own little blog called utilitybend.com. where I write about a variety of things, about UX, about accessibility, but most of all, about CSS, because CSS is the most beautiful programming language on the web. Ooh, I've had some other reactions in the past, but this was nice. And I love writing about it so much that I sometimes do a bunch of guest writing as well. Also, the I/O Tech Hub is our company blog. Do check it out. It has a bunch of great articles. Doing this for my mate Dave sitting here in front. So yeah, check that out. But enough about me. Let's talk about OpenUI. Who has heard of OpenUI before? All right, there's a few people. So it was about 3 years ago I got in touch with OpenUI, and somebody was telling me about it. It's like they're trying to change web standards, and it's going to be something with HTML. I had no idea what this person was talking about, no idea at all. But then I went to their website, and they had a very clear mission statement. And it was that OpenUI will allow web developers to style and extend built-in web UI controls. Now, as a CSS nerd as I am, if you ask me, do you want to style and extend built-in web UI controls? I'm like, yeah, I do. Give it to me. I want this now. One little thing, though, it's not about replacing current web UI. You cannot do that, cannot really break the web, but we sure as hell can enhance it. And that's what this is all about. So what exactly is OpenUI? Well, it's a W3C community group. It's an open group. Anyone can join this. Front-end developer, designers, you can join this. And we do research. We do research about the different parts, states, and behaviors of current design systems. And we tried to find the common ground, because a lot of things in design systems are based on affordances. Now, these things get turned into explainers, where later on they can get picked up by the HTML working group and CSS working group, where they get turned into specs. That's a long story short. And one of the things coming from OpenUI is the popover API. Who has heard of the popover API before? Great. Keep those hands up, please. Keep those hands up. All right. Who has actually implemented the popover before? Oh, that's a lot less. Okay, but I see a few takers, and I love this. So for those that haven't heard of it, this is the in action. Not probably the most fancy demo you'll see here tonight, but it's a button, and you click on it, and a popover opens. But what if I told you that this is just HTML? There's no JavaScript going on. There is no CSS going on, except for some user agent styles. This is pure HTML. So how does this work? Well, let me show you real quick. We have a button. And inside of that button, we have a new attribute called popover target. The value of popover target references an ID, which you can find on the sibling div right there. We also have a popover target action set to toggle. This is the default. You don't have to edit, but I want to show it to you anyway, which means clicking on the button, it will open the popover. Clicking on it again, it will close the popover. Now, the magic happens on the sibling div right there, where you see the new popover attribute. And this is kind of telling the browser, like, hey, don't show me right away. I need to be invoked with something. Now, the good thing about this is that this is HTML, so it means I can style this. But there's more going on. Because these items are linked, the next step focus will be inside of that popover. And what's even more awesome is when you click on a popover and clicking next to it, it will close the popover. If you press the escape key, it will close that popover as well. You get some free keyboard accessibility straight out of the box, and I think that is amazing. But maybe you don't want that. Maybe you don't want that light dismissal behavior. And I can understand that. Maybe you want to have some sort of action before a popover closes. Well, it can be arranged. So once again, same thing, but a little different. I have the popover target action show on my button, meaning the button will only show the popover. But look at the sibling div right there. For my popover, I now gave the value manual. This will remove that light dismissal behavior. Of course, then I'll have to provide my own action. I didn't make this too complicated this time, just added a button inside of my popover with the popover target action height referencing that same ID. And here is that in action. You click on the manual popover, and clicking next to it does absolutely nothing anymore. Pretty handy indeed. So popover target action toggle show and hide are the three options available right now. And popover auto and manual is currently supported in every major browser. I'm sorry, I'm not mentioning Vivaldi here. Sorry, Bruce, sorry. But yeah, there's a polyfill. If you do need to support some older versions of these browsers, there's a polyfill available. It works very nice. Do check that out. I'll share my links and such at the end of this presentation, so don't worry, taking pictures of every one of those. So we have popover auto manual, but we're also currently working on something new which is called popover hint, which will force close other hints. Now this sounds a bit complicated, but it actually makes perfect sense. For example, maybe you want popovers inside of popovers and you only want to close other hints, such as tooltips is a perfect example or perfect use case for this. So yeah, even though we have these things supported already, just know that there's still work going on to really increase the use of this and expand this. You can target this with CSS. By using the popover open state, you can maybe add a little bit of styling when it's open only, maybe some animations, who knows, maybe that's something you'd like to do. And we also have a bunch of JavaScript instances and events that you can use for popovers. Because maybe you want to use a popover for an alert when you submit something to a basket of a web shop, so you get a nice little trigger for that popover right there. The benefit of these popovers is that they get added to the top layer. Who has heard of the top layer before? Let me check it. All right, not that many. Well, so the top layer is a layer. Okay, we're all good on that? But really, seriously, think about it as Photoshop layers. That's kind of how I visualize it when people explain it to me. And one layer is your DOM. Your whole DOM is in one layer. You add a new layer, and that's your top layer. But what happens when you open a popover? It kind of gets moved from that bottom layer to that top layer. So that means it is always on top. It is outside of your document flow. And this makes perfect sense, because popovers should always be on top. No more z-index 9999. You're done. Don't worry, it's in the top layer. It's fantastic. A quick side note, though, that each item inside of a top layer also gets a backdrop pseudo element, which can for some people be a bit confusing, but it's still a nice to have. So if you're wondering what this looks like in DevTools, because it's visualized pretty nice, so you have this top layer setting right there. This opens the shows the popover open inside of the top layer. You see a nice little 1 standing there between the parentheses. And you can also see as a sibling to your HTML element that a top layer is opened. You have this nice little reveal badge that you can click, and it will jump right to that div at the top. You might be wondering, some of you, what happens if there's 2 items inside of that top layer? Well, every item added last in the top layer will always be the item on top. That's how that works. So, but what about animations? I just told you that we're taking this out of our DOM and placing this in a new layer, the top layer. So it's kind of just adding something, and then when you close the popover, this top layer gets destroyed. So how are we going to animate in and out? People that use React frameworks or other JavaScript frameworks know about this. Adding something in your DOM and removing it, animating these things can be pretty hard. Luckily, the CSS working group has worked on something called transition behavior and add starting style, which makes that possible. I'm not going to go deeply on details in that, but simply put, transition behavior allow discrete allows you to animate from and to display none. And add starting style allows you to actually show the styles right before something gets entered into a DOM or top layer. So, long story short, you can actually animate popovers like this. It's a little bit cut off, but I mean, it's not the perfect demo anyway. How about this one? Popover rocket ship. Yeah, that's it. But you can see these animations are interruptible. You can just, oh, it's coming back. Yeah, that's pretty cool. But you can really have some fun with this as well. So, transition behavior, allow discrete, is currently available in every major browser. There's a small thing about at starting style though. In Firefox, it does not work for the display none property yet, but it will. It is spec'd, so it's coming. But another thing you might want to do with popovers is the following. This is the perfect use case for popovers. How about a little toggle tip? So how am I going to position that popover based on my button? I just told you that this popover is gone. It's inside of the top layer. Luckily, to manage this, something else came from the CSS working group, which is the CSS anchoring positioning. Now, with CSS anchor positioning, we will be able to fix this. So this won't work. You can't just add a little wrapper around your button and your popover, place that wrapper position relative, and then absolute position your popover. Because that popover is gone. It's in that top layer. You're not going to be able to target that this way. But take the following example. Kind of like the ones I started out with, right? Basic button in there, targeting that popover, a toggle tip, which will open, and I gave it a nice roll node to it. I'll get back on that later on. But with anchoring, I can do the following. So we have a new attribute that I set on my button called anchor name. I can give it a name of my choosing. It just has to be prefixed with those 2 dashes. That's important. But then it can be a name of your own choosing. And then a popover, I'm going to set position anchor to that same name. Now these two are linked. For my bottom and left properties, you see that I'm using a new anchor function. So what this does, it takes into account that name, and it says that the bottom should be placed on my anchor's top, and the left should be placed in the center. A bit more styling further, and you have created your own little popover. But there's a little problem going on when I try these demos for the first time. Because I noticed when I have multiple popovers, this happens. That's not really what I had in mind. So how can we fix that? Well, they are working on cleaner solutions for this, but I found a way around for just now. We can actually handle multiple toggle tips. It takes just a bit more work right now. So what I did is the following. I set an inline style on my button, where I declared a CSS variable. I gave it the name that I wanted to have, for example, toggle tip 1, and I'm doing the same for the sibling div right there. Just give it another CSS variable name, which is called pop anchor. Now this can be handy because you just have to set a unique ID anyway, so you could just generate it with that as well. I'm doing the same thing for my second toggle tip, but of course then the naming will be different. It will be toggle tip 2 for both of them. What happens next? Because I've set these CSS variables right on the element, I can now use CSS and actually read that custom property or variable inside of the anchor name property. And I could do the same thing for position anchor, making these names unique to my CSS. And that way you have created your perfect toggle tip system by just using HTML and CSS. But we can go further than that. I'm not done yet. Let me talk to you about position try fallbacks. So some designers here, some UX people, in an ideal world, when you're scrolling, you kind of want the item to flip to the bottom in this case, right? If you have some extra room left, that's just good user interface. That's something you want to have. Well, we actually can do something like that. And I'll show you the hard way first before I show you the easy way, because that's just what I wanted to do. So still doing the same thing with the anchor name and the position anchor, but now I'm going to add a new property called position try fallbacks. And I declare 2 names here, which is top align and bottom align. Same thing as before, 2 dashes prefixed and names of my own choosing. Now on the right-hand side, you can see me actually declaring these position try options. Position try fallbacks, sorry, my bad. Position try fallbacks. So based on that order of the property, it's going to try the following. It's going to try and place the bottom to my anchor's top, meaning it will be above my button. If that doesn't work and it doesn't find enough place, it's going to switch to bottom line, which is going to place the top of my popover to my anchor's bottom. It's kind of like a try and catch, but it's just try. That's kind of the thing that's happening right here. But if you do something like that, you have created the perfect toggle tip system, well, at least for bottom and top. And then while you're scrolling the page, you open the nice little popover, and then the following happens. Now, there's still one problem, right? My little arrow is not showing the right way. So now, you're wondering, how am I going to fix this? I don't know. Not yet. They are working at some possibilities for that, but there's, except for maybe some really clever hacks, not really a nice solution to this just yet. But yeah, work in progress. We'll see. They are actually working on it, so we'll find a solution someday. Another thing that you could do instead of those position try fallbacks and custom names is that you have some keywords that you can use for free, which would have been much easier in this case. You have flip block, flip inline, and flip start. And that's just flipping awesome. Because now you can just do the following. Make it flip inline, which is horizontal for our writing mode. Or make it flip block, which is vertical for our writing mode. Or combine the two, which kind of gives a diagonal flow to it. So if you would do something like this, well, you actually have this little popover, and you already have a perfect position fallback. I'm sorry, I thought these slides were 16 by 9. Unfortunately, this is not the case here, but yeah, kind of get the idea of it, right? So that's how that works. Pretty cool. And if that's not enough for you, anchoring also has a completely alternative grid syntax that you can use with position area. Now, I'm not going to go on detail on this whole one, but there's a nice little demo I'd like to show you by Una Kravitz, which you can find on anchortool.com. And this is kind of how it works, where it draws a 3x3 grid around your anchor element, and then your positioned element is going to be placed on the bottom, on the left. It's going to span some rows, it's going to span some columns. You have some possibilities in there to play around with it. But there's so much more to anchoring, and I'm not capable in this time to go through everything of this, but there's a lot of fun stuff you can do with this. Anchoring is currently only available in Chrome, but do note this is not Chrome only, this is Chrome first. So this is spec'd, and this will come to other browsers. And there is still a bunch of updates coming in Chrome Canary as well. There's a polyfill available, which you can use. I have tried it. It actually works quite nice. So do check that out if you want your own popovers without much JavaScript. And if there's one thing that I want to mention to all of you, and a key takeaway that you have to have when you're leaving this room, then it's the following. A popover is not, I repeat, is not a dialogue, right? Remember this, it is not a dialogue. It does not have a role. A popover is meant to be used as an empty shell. So this is kind of its, for some people it's weakness, I call it its superpower. You will have to provide your own role to it if you want to use it, or use the correct element. You can make a popover an alert. You can make a popover a tooltip, as long as you provide the right role. There's a very good article about this that goes in depth by Hidde de Vries, and Scott O'Hara also worked on that article that I suggest you check it out. It's also in my notes that I'll share at the end. But really, do remember, popover, not a dialogue. But we understand it. It's easy, right? And it enters from the middle of the screen. And popovers, you have this whole thing with just HTML you can use, but for dialogues, you have to use JavaScript. You have to use show modal or open. It's so complicated for dialogue elements. So Keith Circle, awesome guy, also in OpenUI, kind of came with the idea of invoker buttons, allowing you to trigger dialogues with HTML and a lot more. First little warning though, I will be talking about some experimental features right now. So for all the features that I'm going to talk about next, you'll probably be best off by using Chrome Canary, going to Chrome flags, and enabling the experimental web platform features. Let me talk to you about invoker commands. So how are we going to trigger a dialog from distance? Well, this might sound a bit familiar. We have a button, and in that button we have an attribute called command4. In that, there's a value that references an ID which now can be found on the sibling dialog element right there. This is a dialog, has a role dialog, and we have the command show modal. Inside of my dialog, there is a command close for a close button, also referencing that same item with an ID. So by just adding this bit of HTML and a bunch of styling with that starting style, I am able to create an experience such as this. And once again, I am not using any JavaScript at all. Yes. But there's much more. Let me show you a quick demo by Luke Warlow, also part of OpenUI, and somebody who really worked a lot on this feature as well. So what he does here, he's opening a date picker from a distance. Or how about a popover? You can do that with invokers as well. Kind of confusing, but still cool. How about the details element? Or how about a select from a distance? It can even be used to play some video controls. So you might be wondering, how does that video thing work? Well, basically the same thing. You have a button with a command for that references that video, and you set the command to play. You could also do play pause or the other things you might be familiar with. And with that, I was able to create this cool little custom video player by just that and nothing more. So what you're seeing, once again, just HTML and CSS. So awesome to do all these experiences. Or how about this one? So in the middle there, you see an input element, and it has the ID num in there. I have a button above it and a button below it that has the command for referencing that ID. The first button at top I set to step down, and the last button I set to step up as a command. Now, you might be already thinking what's going on here, but this is actually me just creating a stepper. Once again, by just using invokers. It's not perfect yet. There's still some bugs in it. As you can see, it's a bit buggy, but it's really cool to create this out of the box. You can even take it one step further. How about a data list? Maybe you want to trigger a data list from a distance. You can do the same thing. Do note you'll have to reference the ID of the data list, not an ID on the input triggering the data list. That gets complicated a bit, but anyway, you can still invoke a data list from a distance by the command show picker, the same thing that was used for the date picker demo that you saw by Luke Warlow before. And this actually makes me open a data list from a button that I just placed next to that input element without any hacks. There's a polyfill for this, but it's still a bit limited. It's momentarily just for dialog elements, popovers, and I think for details element as well, but I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, that's a polyfill you can use because those are the things we're trying to ship first before actually going for video controls, because there's a lot more accessibility caveats and questions about those things. So we'll start with dialogues. Invoker commands are available in Chrome Canary, but they will be updated in Technology Preview of Safari and Firefox Nightly because they already have it inside of them, but it's still the old spec. It changed recently. In the future, we're also working on focus and hover-based popovers. For example, how about this? This is the ID we have for the moment, which is an interest target. It's pretty much the same thing, but this one would work on hover and focus. You see here, this is kind of the basic idea of a tooltip in the future. That's why I also included that popover hint right there, as you can see. So, taking a quick step back from the experimental stuff, maybe I have to show you exclusive accordions. So maybe you wanted to create an experience like this before. It's an accordion. You see those all around. As you can see, I'm using keyboard navigation and this is actually working, so that's pretty nice. Once again, what you're seeing here is just HTML. OpenUI decided to reuse the name attribute that we know from an input type radio, and using the details element as well. By giving the details element the same name attribute with the same value, we kind of link those together so that they become an accordion. That's all it takes, and that's brilliant because I really love reusing things that are already there. This is currently already available in every major browser. You can do this today. This is not that new anymore. Use this, you can. And if you do have a browser that doesn't support that name attribute, it will still be a details element. It's just not going to be an accordion, so it's a nice progressive enhancement. And why I wanted to talk about reusing things is because I wanted to go on about the customizable select element. So maybe you wanted to create something like this. Fortunately, you can't, because a basic select is one of those things that is perfectly controllable. It's accessible, but it's not really stylable. Not at all. You're unable to style the little list box thingy right there. And we always had so many dependencies just to be able to style this little thing. So, yeah, how are we going to fix this? Well, the current plan, and this is a release candidate, so I'm very excited for this one because this has been through a lot of iterations, like a lot, like years and years. But the idea now is to reuse the select element so that we can use this as a progressive enhancement. By opting in via CSS, you could set the select and the picker of the select with the appearance base select, opting you in making your select stylable. So we found out something more, and this is where things get a little bit maybe hacky, but especially very clever. We noticed that the button element and a selected option, a new element holding your selected option, would be completely ignored by browsers today. So that's pretty handy. That gives us the chance to let you create your own custom button, your own custom selected option in there. Browsers now will just ignore it, and we can opt in by styling this. So for the picker select, it's kind of this invisible layer around those options. And you can actually just start styling it as long as you set the base select appearance. So by just using CSS, and I'm going to go through this really quickly, you can do a whole bunch of this. So you see me placing the select to appearance-based select, and you see me doing the same thing on the right-hand side for the picker select. Now, what you see next is the styling of that button, which basic styling in there, so of my own choosing. A selected option, where I set my font weight to 700. I have an open state for my select to style some open styles. I have a closed state for my select to style some closed styles. My picker also has some backgrounds and such, and then I have my options itself. So the options currently uses the checked pseudo class to check for a selected option, and you also have the before pseudo element, and I'll show you what that does in a second. But for now, just remember that I've set this to display none. But by just using this bit of CSS and opting in, I can create a little fun experience like this. And the best thing about this is that this is still accessible. This works with keyboard navigation out of the box. It's so easy to create this kind of experience. So if you were wondering about that before pseudo element, is by default, this would happen. So the user agent default will set a before pseudo element containing a little check mark. I chose to create my own little checked state, so that's the difference there. Well, I do want to talk about a little danger zone as well. So, what if I could put an input in there? I mean, that would be pretty cool, right? Like little combo box creation, gets my select, searching for some options. Well, I actually was able to do this. So I created this little item and I had an input inside of it. And this gave me the chance to style my own little combo box with 50 lines of JavaScript just to handle the search right there and a bit of accessibility issues. Now, I'm sorry, but please don't do this. This is not a very good practice because this will break your backwards compatibility because an input does get rendered when you place it inside of a select element. Yeah, sorry about that. And also think about accessibility. I'm not saying that there isn't a way to make this accessible, but I haven't found it yet. But there are surely more experienced experts on that matter. So somebody might be able to do that, though. But please don't. Just don't. But these things help because research has started for a combo box in HTML because of demos like that. And that's why I want to stretch the importance of creating these demos early on in Chrome Canary, because this opens up opportunities, this opens up ideas, and things are moving forward this way. But it doesn't mean we can't already have a bunch of creative possibilities. So one of the earliest demos I created with this is the following. It's a cool little potion selector, a big fan of Witcher games and such like that. So you could just open this and select your potion. And once again, this is just styling that I'm doing here. You can also select your potion with just your keyboard controls. It's so fun to create this experience. Or how about this one, which is a beautiful little select that uses position sticky to choose a selected item and drag it to the center to show which one you selected, and also opens it in the same way. So fun to create these small experiences. Once again, not hacking in with JavaScript, pure HTML and CSS, what you're seeing here. And last night, after the speakers dinner, I wanted to hack on something. I had this idea, so what you're seeing now is not a finished product yet, but I was thinking like, I want to create a select where you tab inside of an select, and then you can use your left and right arrow to choose your options, and just by enter, it chooses the option, like a really gamified experience. And this is what I have so far. So actually, I'm using arrow keys left and right, selecting a potion based on the Monster Hunter games, and actually just working something like that. This uses also CSS state queries, which is also in Chrome Canary quite new. So there's a lot of more good stuff coming in CSS that actually makes these kinds of things possible. This is currently only available in Chrome Canary, but once again, I believe that this is a release candidate and that we were getting there. But to remember that it is still a work in progress and there might still be some changes happening on this. But you can help. And I'm really asking you, help us. Go to openui.org, create demos. Go on our GitHub, break stuff. Please do. That is important. Break stuff is very important. Anything, if you want, you have an idea, you have a comment, you want to play around with stuff, we love to see your demos. You can always tag me and I'll be happy to share them with everyone else. Because the future of UI, well, it's pretty controllable, right? I think I've shown you that because we're using HTML, which is the backbone of web development. It's something we know, something we're familiar with, something we know how to use. The future of UI is accessible. Sure, you'll have to provide your own role. You might have to do just a little bit of work, but think about the things you get for free. Keyboard controls, so easy. It's never been that easy before. You don't even have to think about it. Tab focus and popovers, you get all that stuff for free. But for a CSS nerd as me, well, the future of UI is stylable, giving me absolutely the chance to really dig in with CSS and create some amazing experience, something really fun for everyone, something enjoyable. And that's what the web is also about. I think that's so important. The web should be enjoyable as well. And this is so fun to do these kinds of things. The future of UI is open. And with this, and these last few words, I do hope you did enjoy Frontmania today. This is me, and let's all have an after party. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.